The June 9th meeting of the Woodbridge Township Board of Education will please come to order. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Ms. Bourdain? Ms. Bourdain?
I think she's coming on now.
Okay. Mr. Harris, we'll come back.
Here.
Mr. Molnar?
Here.
Mr. Sedana?
Here.
Mr. Tamburello?
Here.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Here.
Mr. Velez?
He's coming on now.
So Ms. Bourdain is now on?
Yes, here.
Okay. I hear Mr. Velez and Mr. Della Pietro.
Here. Okay, Mr. Secretary, as required by the Sunshine Law, please read the moments and notice of meetings.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this Act, the Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted as follows. January 29, 2020, May 29, 2020, emailed to the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, and the Municipal Clerk's Office, posted in Avenel Middle School, and the Board of Education Administration Building, also published on the school district website.
Thank you, Mr. Wolferman. Ms. Anderson, please read the closed session statement.
Thank you, Mr. President. The statement, I would like to motion for an approval of the following closed session statement. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board must go into closed session in order to discuss subjects exempt from the public portion of our meeting. The discussions to be held in closed session will be regarding personnel matters. Additionally, the board will discuss the superintendent's merit pay. Any information regarding the closed session discussion will be released to the public when the reasons for discussing these matters in closed session no longer exist.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Anderson. Do I have a motion on the floor by Ms. Anderson? Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Mr. Molnar. I have a motion by Mr. Anderson, seconded by Mr. Molnar. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, seeing none, motion carries. Okay, at this time, we're going to retire to closed session. We'll be back at 6:30. Thank you. Okay, I'll call the Board of Education meeting to order. Okay, this is our first board meeting since the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. There are certainly moments in the history of the United States that force us to take a good look at good hard look at ourselves. Clearly, this is one of them, and that's exactly what we're going to look into here to make some changes and educate our staff and whatnot. So at this time, if you please join me in a pledge of allegiance to the flag and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay, do I have a motion to reconvene?
So motion.
Motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Velez. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Velez, seconded by Mr. Treebwasser. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, seeing none, motion carries. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Ms. Bourdain?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Molnar?
Here.
Mr. Sedana?
Here.
Mr. Tamburello?
Here.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Here.
Mr. Velez?
Here.
And Mr. Della Pietro?
Here. Okay, will someone make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting?
So motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Treebwasser. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Harris?
Yes. Second.
Okay. Okay, so I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Treeweiser, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Mr. Secretary, please state for the record any notice of bids received by the board.
Thank you, Mr. President. On May 19th, 2020, Correct Samjian bid project number 8170 MSES1 for ceiling renovations at various schools. On May 27th, 2020, Correct Samjian bid project number 8170 PRES for a masonry facade at school number 9. June 4th, 2020, Correct Samjian bid project number 8170 CAES 20 for boiler replacements at School 20 and Island Middle School. And on June 5th, 2020, an RFP 21-01 for construction management services.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Okay, to facilitate the flow of this virtual meeting, all questions and comments from the public will be addressed after the presentation of all agendas. Dr. Zaga, please state for the record the superintendent's report for the month of May 2020.
Mr. President, I have the following reports to present to the board. Student registers and fire drill report, suspension reports for elementary and secondary schools, and the bomb threat reports.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Zaga. Superintendent's agenda. Dr. Zaga, do you have any recommendations?
Mr. President, I have 16 items to present to the board.
Okay, do I have a motion for the superintendent's agenda?
So motion.
Okay, motion by Mr. Treeweiser. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Sedana. Okay, any comments or questions from the board? Okay, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson.
On item number 12 and 13, I will be abstaining. Yes to all other items.
Ms. Bourdain.
Yes.
Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris.
I'm sorry.
Superintendent's agenda, your vote.
I'm sorry. All right. Yes. Sorry. The mute kind of kept going back and forth. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Mr. Molnar.
Yes.
Mr. Sedana.
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello.
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser.
Yes.
Mr. Velez.
Yes.
And Mr. Della Pietro.
Yes. Okay, curriculum, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Ms. Della Pietro. To the public, I know this came up last time. On the home screen of the district website, under quick notes, the 7th item down, you'll see board agendas. That's where you can get access to the board agenda if you're watching from home this evening. So with the curriculum agenda, the curriculum committee, on recommendation of the superintendent of schools and assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, presents the following 7 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Harris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, second by Ms. Bourdain. Okay, any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson.
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Molnar.
Yes.
Mr. Sedana.
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello.
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser.
Yes.
Mr. Velez.
Yes.
And Mr. Della Pietro.
Yes. Okay, finance and insurance, Mr. Tamburello.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Insurance Committee, on the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Business Administrator Board Secretary, presents the following 13 items. This evening, I move for the adoption of the foregoing 13 items.
Thank you, Mr. Tamburello. I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Tamburello. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Ms. Anderson. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson.
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Molnar.
Yes.
Mr. Sedana.
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello.
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser.
Yes.
Mr. Velez.
Yes.
And Mr. Della Pietro.
Yes. Okay, technology, Mr. Sedana.
Athletics?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just 1 second.
Okay.
The Technology Committee, on the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, presents the following 3 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Sedana. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Treeweiser. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana,
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello,
Yes.
Mr. Treewasser,
Yes.
Mr. Velez,
Yes.
and Mr. Della Pietro.
Yes. Okay, athletics and extracurricular. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Athletics and Extracurricular Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, presents the following 2 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Ms. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Velez. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
Mr. President?
Ms. Anderson?
Yes, I have a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
So we received an enormous amount of support to recognize the following coaches: Henry H. Chomicki, Joseph E. Martino Sr., Harding Pete Peterson. I want to announce that we will be moving forward with the renaming of our facilities to honor their legacies.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana,
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello,
Yes.
Mr. Treewasser,
Yes.
Mr. Velez,
Yes.
and Mr. Della Pietro.
Yes. Okay, transportation, Mr. Velez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Find it in. The Transportation Committee, on the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Business Administrator, Board Secretary, present the following 2 items, and I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Velez. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Sedana. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Seeing none. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana,
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello,
Yes.
Mr. Treewasser,
Yes.
Mr. Velez,
Yes.
and Mr. Della Pietro.
Yes. Personnel agenda, Mr. Molnar.
Mr. Della Pietro, I believe we missed the buildings and grounds.
Oh, hang on.
Didn't want to-
Area.
Yep.
Hang on. Wait a minute. Transportation, 20.
Just before that.
I have, according to my paperwork here, at transportation, 21 is personnel, 22 is cafeteria, 23 is negotiations.
All right, I'm
Um,
ready, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Should we do personnel?
I didn't hear you, Brian.
Are you ready for personnel?
Yes.
Personnel Committee, on the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, presents the following. Tonight, I will be moving 16 items.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Molnar. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, by Mr. Treeweiser. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
Mr. Delapietro?
Yeah, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, I wanted to just mention this on behalf of the board. I technically can't speak on behalf of the board, but I thought I'd just throw this one out there. Item number 2, we have 19 of our longtime employees retiring. So a hearty congratulations and a thank you to those 19 wonderful employees for your years of service. Ladies and gentlemen, if you get the opportunity, please check out the names. Many of these employees have been with us 20, 30 years. Please take a moment to take a look at their names and, say a prayer for them in retirement. And, we wish them all well. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Wolferman, did I miss buildings and grounds? Did I jump over
Yes.
that?
Yeah,
Okay.
we jumped over buildings and grounds and cafeteria, but we can certainly do that after we complete the personnel agenda.
Okay. All right, we'll do that. I apologize for that. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Anyone opposed? Okay, or okay, we just have to vote on that, correct?
Comments from the board?
Comments from the board? Seeing none?
Okay.
Okay,
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Molnar. Mr. Molnar?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Sedana,
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello,
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser,
Yes.
Mr. Velez?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser, just to confirm, did you have,
You're right. I have
abstain.
taken a name Valerie Henderson in item 15.
Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
Mr. Delapietro?
yes.
Thank you. And now we can go back to the two other committees, the B&G and the cafeteria.
Okay, let's do B and G because I have CAF after personnel. So let's do B and G.
Sure.
Okay, B and G, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Delapietro. The Buildings and Grounds Committee, on recommendations of the Superintendent of Schools and Business Administrator and Board Secretary, present the following 14 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Harris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Sedana. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
Mr. Delapietro?
Mr. Harris?
Yes. I wanted to just highlight a few items on the agenda here for the public. You don't have to look at the numbers. I don't have them, in particular order, but I wanted to just reference that many of the referendum projects, some of the smaller ones, will be getting off the ground beginning this summer. Specifically, work at schools 19, 9, 20, Island Middle School, and Woodbridge High School. That's some of the projects that we are approving tonight that will get going. And I want to give a shout out to the Buildings and Grounds Department of both the school district as well as the township. Our shared services agreement with Woodbridge Township for custodial services. Many of those custodians have been using their for lack of a better word, free time at the schools during the remote learning to redo the floors, paint gymnasiums, and other facilities. So I want to give a shout out to them for not only using that time wisely, but for preparing our schools for next year. Something that we do most of our work in this area over the summer. I want to thank them for all the work that they're putting in. Hopefully in September we'll be able to see those new refreshed, beautiful facilities. So we thank them very much for their efforts. Thank you, Mr. Delapietro.
Cafeteria, Miss Anderson.
Mr. Delapietro, we didn't vote yet.
Okay, let's try this again.
No problem. Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain,
Yes.
Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris? Mr. Harris?
Nobody's playing pranks on me by muting me, but no offense taken, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana,
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello,
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser,
Yes.
Mr. Velez,
Yes.
and Mr. Delapietro.
Yes. Okay, finally, the cafeteria. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Cafeteria Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Business Administrator Board Secretary, presents the following 3 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Ms. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Treewaser. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana. Mr. Sedana?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Tamburello,
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser,
Yes.
Mr. Velez,
Yes.
and Mr. Delapietro.
Yes. Okay, negotiations, Mr. Velez.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Board of Education Committee for Negotiations present the following 6 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Velez. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have are there any comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Get your pen ready here. I'm sorry, Mr. Wolferman. I have to abstain on items number 1, 3, and 4. I'll be voting yes on items 2 and 5, and I'll be voting no on item number 6. Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Molnar,
Yes.
Mr. Sedana,
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello,
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser,
I will be abstaining on items 1, 3, and 4, and yes on all other items.
Mr. Velez,
Yes.
and Mr. Delapietro.
I'll be abstaining on items 1, 3, and 4, yes on all others.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bush, do you have any recommendations?
None at this time, Mr. President. Thank you.
Is there any old business that should be brought to the attention of the board? No? Okay. Any new business that should be brought to the attention of the board?
Mr. President?
Mr. Molnar?
Yeah, if I could just say, I know tomorrow as we sit here is the end of our school year. I just want to all the students, to all the parents, to all the staff, I know in September when we came back to school, it was like any other year. Everything was going good. And then right after New Year's, our world began to change. And for our students and our staff and everybody in the Woodbridge community, we had to, in midstream, come up with a new way of learning. I would like to thank Dr. Zaga and Colt and everybody in the administration, our teachers, everybody, for coming up with this plan in midstream. Like I said, it was not easy. And to all, our students, the springtime is the fun time for us as board members because, we get to go to the recognitions for students' hard work, elementary school, spring concerts and getting ready for their promotions. Middle school, National Junior Honor Societies and promotion exercises in high school. For what these students went through this year, I just give them so much credit for enduring it all. And, my message is they're going to be that much stronger for enduring this. To be a senior with no prom and, junior, no cotillion, these are life memories that you live for. And, and to the administration and the staff for coming up with, maybe not, the traditional way of celebrating these milestones, but, not forgetting them and making it, where, we did throw upon some recognition for them. So I just want to thank everybody for thinking outside the box and for, doing the best we can under the situation, that we had. Was it the best? No, nothing's compared to, what was normal. But unfortunately, we don't live in that world no more. And, until we get back to normal, just a big thank you for everybody for all their hard work and effort. And for our graduates, congratulations. We will see you July 8th. And, we will have that graduation ceremony for you for our middle school, 8th graders that are moving on, best of luck in high school. And just everybody have a great, safe summer. And we'll hit the reset button in September and we'll see where we are then.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Molnar. Any other comments, new business?
Mr. President,
Ms. Bourdain?
I just wanted to give a quick shout out to number 3 on the curriculum agenda, that there's going to be school counselors available to the students from June 22nd to August 21st. We're living in unprecedented times, and I'd like to thank the district for making sure that our students are, their emotional well-being is being addressed and taken care of. And I hope that nobody needs it, but it is available. We live in a different world right now, and our counselors are prepared to try to help our students. So thank you.
Any other new business?
Mr. President?
Mr. Harris?
I want to echo everything that Mr. Molnar said. A hearty congratulations to all of our senior graduates, as well as the other students that are being promoted from 5th to 6th and 7th, 8th to 9th. Congratulations, and enjoy your summer, everybody.
Okay. Any other new business? Okay, let's have a couple of things. I'd like to congratulate the class of 2020 on your graduation. We had multiple plans in place. I have to thank the administration, Dr. Zega and his staff, Dr. Massimino, Mr. Small, going to the mall, measuring it out. I mean, we had, I think, we have to plan F now, I think. We have all these plans. So you guys put a lot of hard work into this, right through the principals, right down to the students. Everyone had input to do what we did back in March, to go from, learning as we knew it day to day to the next day doing, virtual learning over, with the Genesis. I mean, overall, it seems like from March until tonight flew. And overall, it went exceptionally well. We hit some bumps in the road, but as a team, we fixed it. So Dr. Zega, to you and your staff, to the principals, to everyone out in the school district, you did an excellent job. We got through this. Graduation's July 8th. So we have a month. We could relax a little bit, and then we get ready for July 8th, and I guess the year is over. But I'd like to thank everybody for your hard work. Our bus drivers who kept the kids fed. It wasn't easy. I think we did very well. So these are all to be congratulated. From the bottom of my heart, I appreciate it. Is there any other new business? Okay, in keeping with our past practice, we will open this portion of the meeting for comments and questions from the public. If you wish to say something, please call 732-602-8472 or 732-602-8550. When prompted, please provide your name and the section of the township that you reside. Please limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes in accordance with our regulation 1100D. I will not answer any questions until you have completed your 5 minutes to allow you full opportunity to say what you need so as not to interrupt your time. So we'll give it a couple of minutes.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
You are on the air. Please state your name and the town you reside in.
Thank you. This is Ken Gardner from Woodbridge. And, just first on a side note, I want to thank everybody for the great job they're doing for our district. All of you board members volunteering your time, and Mr. Zega, Mr. Bader, Mr. Messamina, the principals. It's been incredible what you've done and helped our teachers and support staff do for our students this year. So let's hope things get better and everybody's healthy. We get back to school in September. But the reason I called in today was about the request for the dedication of the Woodbridge track that my wife and I sent in. Both my wife Janine and I are Barron track alumni, and we certainly bleed red and black. For me, my mom died the August before I was entering Woodbridge High School. And although, can you hear me? Am I good?
Yeah, you're good. We hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry. Phone was beeping a little bit. I didn't know if I lost you. As I was saying, my mom had passed away just as I was entering Woodbridge High School. And although I had a great family, there are many hours in the day, and the Woodbridge High School teachers and coaches played a major role in helping me move forward in a positive way. For me, I could have easily fallen into depression, drugs, or alcohol, but thanks to the likes of Henry Shemicki, I didn't. He coached for 45 years and taught for 49 and clearly stood out. Around the time of his retirement, Janine and I wrote to the board to ask for the track to be dedicated in his honor. But we're told that dedications were reserved for the deceased. Henry Shemicki taught my wife, and we both ran track. I met Janine track, and I know most of you are thinking now she probably should have ran a little faster in the opposite direction. But after that, she really never ran away from Woodbridge High. As you know, she became a teacher and colleague of Shemicki's and learned to respect him in that way as well. Back then, track was far from a glory sport in those days, but Shemicki encouraged your participation. He cultivated you to achieve more than you could on your own. For me, it led to a school record in the 400-meter intermediate hurdles. It didn't stop there. After then, or in my senior year, he introduced me to Seton Hall University track coach John Moon. I was able to become a walk-on the team and become a New Jersey College champion in the mile relay, all because of Shemicki's introduction. I hope each of you has had a chance to look at Shemicki's memorial page on Facebook. It's been amazing. Over 3,000 people have signed a petition to have the track named after him. The stories they detail of their time under Shemicki's wing are amazing. We knew he was great, but the number of people he inspired is overwhelming. Dedicating the track in his honor is not just a tribute to him. It will continue to serve as an inspiration to teachers, to coaches, to students, and to the entire Barron family. We hope you can honor the request at this time. And while we know that the coach is resting in peace, we also know that his memory will keep living. Thank you very much for your consideration. I appreciate your time and hope that you can honor this request. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Any other calls, Doc? Yeah, okay.
Yes, caller, you're on the air. Please state your name and the town in which you reside.
Yeah, hi, this is David Sinkowitz Island. First, I wanted to wish best of luck to the class of 2020. I know this was quite a different year than what everybody expected, but hopefully they will be resilient and move on to bigger and better things in the various directions they may all take. And I wish them all the best of luck. I just had a few comments and then a few questions. First, on the distance learning, in case we need to pursue distance learning further in the next year, I just have a few comments based on my experiences with my own daughter. And I'm quite sure other experiences will vary from other parents and families based on the age and motivation of each child. I'm sure some children do fine in distance learning, others might struggle depending on their situation. But the comments, I think, are more general that I have. So first of all, overall, I think it went pretty well and better than some of the stories I've heard from other districts. But there are a few areas, mainly in the area of communication, I would like to see improved. So first, I think it's preferable that if there's distance learning, that multiple times a week and preferably every day, teachers should meet with their classes in a live meeting like Zoom or Google Meet. This happens in some, it doesn't happen in others. This would allow the students to ask questions, give the teachers the opportunity to get feedback from the students. And I don't think it has to be a very long meeting. I just think the opportunity should exist for that kind of give and take between the students and teachers, similar that you might have in a classroom where you get to meet with them all the time. Second, and this part got more complicated as the schedule shifted to end the learning, at least in the high school, at about noon. So at least in Kennedy, I don't know if everything was standardized across the district. I'm not sure how that worked, but there needs to be a set time when teachers are available and kind of required to respond to private student questions in a timely manner. And by that, I mean, I know teachers by contract and just, to treat everybody well as an employee need, certain periods off during the day, whatever that is, whether it's a block, 2 blocks, however you're calculating that during this kind of strange schedule. But there have been times when communication has been difficult, and it isn't always clear when and how to reach out to a teacher, especially when there's something important like a test is being given or an assignment is being done and a question arises. So I think there needs to be kind of a time period, whether that, that the kids all know when it is, that they should expect somebody to respond to them, and preferably have the ability to do it privately. So, for example, there might be a reason to keep it private because it's about a question that might give away something to another student, or it might be a reason just because it's more personal to that child. So it shouldn't just be like where everybody just responds in a public, Google Classroom setting or something, because that doesn't always give you that opportunity to ask a more personal or private question. The next comment, so that's what I have for distance learning. Budget issues, I don't know what will be coming up in the future, if anything, but in case there will be additional expenses due to social distancing or related expenses, I do urge the board to make sure that priorities are given first to academics and maintaining all the programs before any extracurricular activities are paid for. So in other words, if you're going to lose out on money, I don't want to see, you eliminating staff in favor, but just so you can keep, all the extracurriculars going. So, I don't know if that issue will come up, but I'm just mentioning my preference. Also, because some travel may cost more due to the need for additional buses, I do urge the board to treat all extracurricular activities and extracurricular travel equally, whether they do or don't get transportation. So we should not, for example, prioritize one kind of activity over another. So because students participate in a variety of activities, and each student should have the same chance as every other student based on their interests. Whether that means they get the transportation, or whether it means some of those trips have to get eliminated. All right, so that leads me to my questions, and I have 2 main questions. First, regarding graduation. I saw today from the governor in the state that they anticipate that by July, when the graduations are expected to take place, that the crowd sizes would rise to 500 at the time of graduation. Now, I'm not sure if there's a way you distinguish between, for example, the crowd in the stands from the graduates on the field. But if there is not a distinction, if they're considered all part of the same crowd, my question is it anticipated that there will be perhaps a student-only graduation with the entire class, but then family members would view a live stream and not be necessarily present? Or is it anticipated that you would have multiple ceremonies with parts of each class and 2 or possibly more family members allowed to attend?
Mr. Pickwis, before you get to your second question, you're pushing 6 minutes, so if you could finish up, please.
Sure. The second question is fast. All right. I asked this at the last meeting, but I didn't get an answer. In the past, the board withheld personnel agendas and negotiation agendas until after closed session discussion taken place, and then put out the agenda where it could be read by the public prior to the board's discussion and vote, or prior to the board's vote, I should say. On the rare occasions, it might even be modified verbally when the agenda motion was made if there was some change to that agenda. I know there's a requirement for discussions of these matters to occur in closed session, but is there any requirement that the agendas be kept secret as they have been in the past? Couldn't, especially for a meeting like this, which is being done remotely, couldn't the entire agenda be given to the public in advance? Not just for the remote meetings, but for any meeting, but in particular for the remote meetings where we otherwise have no idea what the board is doing. And that's it. Thanks.
Okay. Doc, you
Sure, Mr. President. The first question, yes, the plan is if we're not allowed to have guests, the students would prefer to all be together on the field and then stream it to the parents. But we're hoping that we can get at least 2 guests per graduate and have all the graduates on the field at the same time. And the other question, I think, was probably for Mr. Bush.
With respect to the agenda information?
Yes.
I mean, look, it's an annually scheduled meeting. The board has fulfilled its requirement with respect to the publication of agenda information. But at the end of the day, at some point, I mean, the board, I think, strives to do this in person again. No one wants to be in this position. The board is certainly not using this as an excuse to get away with something. This is just the circumstances we're in. And I think sooner than later, depending on what's available for us in terms of options for indoor meeting, the board will, with whatever social distance measures necessary, do what it needs to do to have an in-person meeting. There's a lot of reasons why I know this board will want to do that sooner than later.
Mr. President?
Mr. Molnar.
To Mr. Bush, right now, I mean, I guess we're still under the 10-person minimum, right, indoor?
It's just changed today. I think as of this week, it's changing to 50 indoors, according to the governor.
Okay, so then we could basically then meet in public now, right?
There are some considerations as to what if I mean, this group alone is 16 people, right? So sometimes in Woodbridge, you get some pretty heavy attendance once in a while, and you may end up pushing up against 50. If that were the case, we'd probably have to come up with some alternative, but there are a number of ways. Some districts I'm noticing are putting together lists so that you can call in advance and sort of reserve your spot, if you will. And then there's other districts that are just seeing how it goes, and the first, number of people that make it under the wire can make it in. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you are as accessible to the public as possible. This is a conversation I'm going to have with your board president and the superintendent, and I presume that they'll discuss with you as to what will happen. But I think with it not being 25 and being 50, it's much more likely that board meetings around the state will begin to be held in person.
Doc, any more phone calls? Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Hello, caller, you're on the air. Please state your name and the part of town you reside.
Hi, Amber Jarrett. I live in Woodbridge proper. I'm calling in tonight as an educator and a parent in the district. On Sunday, I attended the protest organized by former and current Woodbridge Township School District students. Some of those students spoke of dehumanizing and belittling experiences they've had in our township schools, even directly naming a teacher at Woodbridge High School. Sadly, the experiences of these students are not unique. Racism is a pervasive issue in our schools and in our community. The district recently sent out a letter in the wake of the death of George Floyd, promising to, and I'm quoting, do a better job of addressing diversity, inclusion, and equity by providing students with, and again quoting, more opportunities to voice their opinions in a logical, effective, nonviolent manner. While this may sound good on paper, these are merely words, and these words, it could be argued, minimize the magnitude of the work that actually needs to be done. It's time for the district to step up and begin taking real action. The public wants more than promises and commitments to do better. We want to see a real plan. A plan that does more than promise students opportunities to voice their opinions. That is not enough. I offer the following suggestions as a start. You should reach out to local organizations, leaders in the communities, and students, both former and current, to create a committee of stakeholders that represents diverse voices and includes people of color. Build an anti-racism task force. Learn about underrepresented groups and what they value. Learn about their experiences in this district. Brainstorm with them, problem solve with them. Create a plan that addresses the staff bias that I know exists. Seek out professional development opportunities. The New Jersey State Bar Foundation offers free trainings and a wealth of resources for educators that address bias, institutional racism, and civil rights. Engage staff in those trainings. Start staff book clubs. Read White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo or Racism Without Racists by Eduardo Benillo Siva. There is a wealth of valuable resources available. You need to start using them. Review your current hiring practices. This district has a tradition of predominantly hiring district graduates. While some may see this as a benefit, it also poses a real danger. When the majority of the teachers are products of the same system, the system becomes stagnant. The mantra cannot be, this is the way we've always done things here. Create partnerships with universities and programs that actually include anti-bias training as part of their teacher preparation programs. Actively recruit teachers and administrators that reflect the true diversity of our student population. Black teachers and teachers of color matter, and research supports that they have a positive impact on student achievement. You need to take a critical look at your curriculum in our schools. Involve that task force. Anti-racism curriculum cannot just consist of what we call heroes and holidays. It's not enough to just teach Black History Month. Solely using this additive or contributive approach in which you integrate some content without truly changing the curriculum does nothing more than reinforce the notion that people of color are not integral parts of our society. It keeps them and their histories separate. The content and contributions highlighted are also typically chosen by white educators and taught from a white perspective. While Martin Luther King Jr. his message of peace and unity certainly has value, it is also perceived as the least threatening to whites. He does not, however, represent the entire civil rights movement. Stop teaching civil rights as if they were a thing of the past. Research contributions to people of color and from the LGBTQ community in all subject areas. Bring content about underrepresented groups to the center of your curriculum. Change that white dominant perspective. Consider content, issues, and events from multiple perspectives and points of view. Create a curriculum that helps students acquire the knowledge and skills they're going to need to make reflective decisions and to take social and civic action to promote democracy and democratic living for all. Directly and implicitly incorporate prejudice reduction into the curriculum. Develop lessons and activities that help students to develop positive attitudes towards different racial, ethnic, and cultural groups. Deliberately develop cross-racial activities and action projects for students. Use high-quality literature to spark conversation and dialogue. The Notable Books for a Global Society is a great place to start for a book list for students of all ages. Finally, you need to look at school discipline reports in our various schools. Identify and analyze those patterns. Are students of color being reprimanded at a higher rate? Compare the consequences given to students of color to their white counterparts. Are they more likely to receive a harsher punishment? Address it. Look at the representation of students of color in AP and honors courses versus special ed and S-track courses. I can guarantee you're going to find under and over representation. Find out why. Revise your system for recommending students for these courses and programs. This is hard work, and it's going to require you as educational leaders to do far more. A letter is not enough. Promises to do better are not enough. Opportunities for discussion are not enough. The total environment of our schools needs to change. You must work to transform the attitudes, beliefs, and actions of both teachers and administrators. Our district and community continues to change and grow in diversity. If you're not able to change with it, you have no place leading our schools. Black children matter. Black futures matter. Thank you.
Any more phone calls, Doc, or
Still, Peter?
Mr. Harris?
Yes. To the woman who just spoke, I'm sorry I missed your name. I didn't recognize it when you first said it. But if what you read was tremendous, could you email that to Dr. Zega or the board? The board has a universal email address. If you're not as a former educator, you may know this. It's board@woodbridge.k12.nj.us. I think we'd all like to see or hear that again. And we can take some of those, or many or most, if not all, of your suggestions into consideration and put them into action. I know, Dr. Zega, you'll see more in the very near future on many of the issues that you just brought forward tonight. And thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
We have.
Yes, sir.
Okay, caller, you're on the air. Please state your name and the part of town you reside in.
Yes, my name is Michael Stawicki, and I reside in Woodbridge proper. I'm calling in regards to the dedication of the track to Henry Schmicke. I am his cousin, and I'm calling on behalf of myself and his family. First of all, to thank you for allowing me to speak. I secondly want to thank Ken Gardner for a very nice commentary that he made about my cousin. It was very touching. I just wanted to make you aware of the fact that, again, reiterating what Ken has mentioned, that, we presented the board with a copy, both electronic and hard, of the petition, which was signed by over 3,000 supporters, former students, former boys and girls who were participants in the various track and field categories at Woodbridge High School. I think that if you read, if you have the opportunity and you've read some of the commentary that was made by these former students, I think that Henry Schmicke exemplifies what a teacher and a coach should be. I think he sets a fine example, and I think that he deserves the recognition for the 49 years of teaching and 46 years of coaching that he gave to the students of Woodbridge Senior High School over these years. I myself am a former student of Woodbridge High School and actually a former teacher in the district at Woodbridge High. And I had the good fortune to teach with Henry for several years while I was there. And it was very enjoyable. And I got a first-hand glance of Mr. Schmicke in action, to say. I do hope that you will give serious consideration to this request that is being made by both friends and family, and that we can come to a positive conclusion. And I will end my time on the phone with, I have just a quick question. I apologize if I just didn't quite understand, but I believe at the beginning of the meeting that there was a commentary made in which Henry's name was included, but I have to apologize that I didn't quite follow what that was. So if perhaps you folks can please elaborate on what that statement was, the meaning of it. Thank you.
Okay. I think that was the statement that before we voted on, Ms. Anderson made the statement with the renaming of the track. I think that's what you're referring to. That's when the name came up when we put it on the committee. Is he still there, Doc, or did?
Oh yes, I am. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'm staying in the room, so I can't actually hear you very well. So I apologize.
Okay, I apologize too. It's talking over the computer. It's a little difficult.
I understand.
So to be clear, I'm sorry, Mr. President. So to be clear, Mr. Stawicki, the board, Ms. Anderson, the chair of the athletics committee, did mention previously that we will be moving ahead to make a dedication to Henry Schmicke and also two other coaches Joe Martino, and Harding Peterson. And they'll be honored at our facilities.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I look forward to your formal announcement as to what that actually results in.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much for your time, and have a good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
You're welcome. You too.
Thank
Any other callers, Doc? That's it. Okay. Seeing no other callers, at this time, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So motion?
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Mr. Harris. I have a second.
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 Okay, seconded by Mr. Molnar. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Meeting's adjourned.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.